Yo. Shout out to Zero on freesound.org. This one is pretty juicy. Hello everybody. Just gonna have this going on in the background a little bit. I'm drinking some ripe tea nuggets. Ooh. Menthol, sour cherries, vanilla. That menthol cooling thing is definitely interesting and different. Ooh. So much dark cherry chocolate, truffle, dark. Ooh, that is nice. It's almost too cherry. So it's like a cherry dark chocolate truffle. Incredible. Sour, perfumey. I think the sourness, and I gave this 2 steepings before we started, and I also got the dust out. The sourness on this is really the biggest reason why it's not quite as good. It has a really nice medicinal menthol, camphor, earthy resinousness to it, almost like green wood. A nice smokiness that kind of turns at the end there. So this tea is cheap. This tea is meant to be cheap. It's kind of like so cha tuo I think means just like tea clumps or tea nuggets basically, and these ripe teas can develop basically just a fused up nugget where the leaves, when they're turning the pile, clump together and remain clumped through the whole process of ripening. Now, it influences the clump of tea. Excuse me, geez. Poo burps. It influences the processing and fermentation rate of those little clumps, because when you're turning the pile and aerating the leaves and separating all the leaves, you are in effect restarting the one leaf to fermentation process. But in the nugget form, it's kind of like a clump, where the interior of the clump is going to ferment at a different rate than the exterior. So these nuggets are brought together and then pressed into a brick in this case. And this is the Yunnan sourcing version of that. And it's unclear. I think it's the 2006 version. I know that they released one that's 2012 that they still have on their site that says that it's 2006 material and 2009 material. 250 gram brick here. Packaging. Try to get some. Hard to see, but And here's the thing about something like this. I actually kind of enjoy this now as a more advanced tea drinker, if you will, but it's got a sourness that's pretty intense and not the right introduction to a ripe tea for, in my opinion. So while this does fit kind of like a lower price tier category, and it does so well, and I find it to be interesting, and this is something where I might even bring this to an advanced tea drinker to say like, hey, this is weird and it's not good, but it's weird. What do you think it is? And we chat about it. That to me is almost like, strangely enough, kind of like what this tea is about. It's not a daily drinker for me because of the sourness, but it does have a lot of depth and earthiness that certainly is interesting. A little chalky. Kind of some purpley fruit thing going on, and minerals. Very strong. Wow. And this will kind of brew out, and it will change fairly dynamically compared to a normal ripe because the actual clumps of the nuggets will unfurl at different rates, kind of like a roll dulong. Oh, really dark and stormy kind of vibe. Wow. Strong. And it's like, I don't not like it, you know? I do kind of like it, but it's a little weird. It definitely does not taste like ordinary ripe processing. It's not that it's got like a stinkiness necessarily. Yeah, interesting. Sitting here with it some more, definitely has some like strong, deep, what I would kind of think of as raw flavors in some sense. So you might have a less, again, I couldn't tell you how does the nugget change the way that it's fermented perfectly, but it does seem to have a bit more of a sourness to it in my mind compared to something else, especially of this age. And so these kind of teas are certainly interesting. I think the thing that I wanted to do on this episode more than anything was to revisit some of kind of the first teas that I ordered. And so I drank through a bunch of this. This is how much I have left. And so nothing wrong with getting some cheaper teas to try and have in the catalog. I'm also probably brewing this a bit more aggressively than I would have when I was first starting by quite a bit. But nevertheless, go experiment. That's I think the big takeaway from this episode. It's not about the specific tea, although it certainly is interesting, and I think the actual brick itself. Let's try to get a little bit more of a close up of this because it's just visually so appealing. It's almost like a candy bar where you can kind of imagine just like cracking it in half and it would just kind of crack perfectly. You can see where it's cut. And this is not supposed to be high quality ripe. This is like restaurant ripe tea in my mind. But it's still a kind of tea that's produced and it's still part of ripe. And heck, I bet there's a couple of these that are interesting that are out there in the world, in the wild. So this one needs more time to hang out, weirdly enough. Not something I typically would say for a ripe. And definitely would encourage a couple of rinses on it as well. So go out there and have fun. Not every tea session has to be some super fancy thing. It's interesting to taste where I've been in some sense. And so certainly there's a culling. We only have so much space to keep teas and stuff like that. But yeah, who knows? You might be surprised by something hanging out in the back of your tea closet.